Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this very last-minute impromptu unwelcome session. This is not what Independent Venue Week is about, but here we are. I'd like to thank everyone that's been able to join the call so far. That's Jim from the Mill, Clara from Music Venue Trust, Nigel from Dodgy, Dom and Paul from the Boiler Room, Chris Sherrington from the York music area, Dave Hughes from Hotbox Live has just joined, Annabella from MMF, and Adam Webb, who supports on the Fanfare Alliance and other interests. So thank you all for joining. Independent Venue Week is usually a week of celebration and spotlight to show just how fantastic and vibrant and vital our community is. So to have an announcement yesterday from PRS for Music about how they intend to stifle not just the week, because it's so much more than that, but also bring in a new, not consulted with, and not, the community hasn't been spoken about, felt like a real blow. I think I don't want to do a lot of the talking here. I wanted this just to be an open forum. If you're watching publicly on YouTube or Facebook, you can put questions in the comment section. If you're watching on Twitter, you can ask questions with the hashtag #FixPRS. Just want to give a little snapshot. We did a straw poll earlier today, and 6 of our venues have cancelled shows for the rest of the week now. They cancelled 23 shows between them. And between Thursday and Saturday, we were due to have 71 shows. So it's a really big chunk of Independent Venue Week. Of the 15, across 15 of those shows, the number of people who now are not working across those 15 shows across 4 days amounts to 152 people. That's 152 artists, crew, venue people who have suddenly had their income dropped, no work, and there's been a lot of planning and preparations gone into this week. So it's a real blow. I think we're going to aim to be on here for up to an hour. I'm going to open the screen up to whoever would like to get the ball rolling. Perhaps Clara, I know this is an issue that's been very close to Music Venue Trust's heart. I'd like the open discussion to be as open and informal as possible. So I'm going to hand over to you, Clara, to see. I know that you've been inundated on your Twitter this week.
Sure, thank you, Sybil. I guess for me, I guess I would want to start with the fact that streaming was born out of a crisis and an urgent need. A lot of artists who are streaming live gigs are predominantly doing it for 2 reasons. Either they're trying to raise money for themselves because they haven't had any income streams, or they're doing it for charitable causes. And so I think, it's really important that there's a very urgent need that this money gets to the artists quickly, because essentially, ultimately, it's about livelihoods and their homes and things like that. And so I think unfortunately, this type of license mechanism doesn't really create the agility and the speed that this type of crisis requires, and it doesn't really meet those needs for what the artists are trying to achieve with the streams. So that's an interesting one kind of point I'd like to sort of talk about. And then the other is more kind of conceptual, I guess, which I think is that artists who are the rights holders should have choice. They should have a toolkit. They should be able to have discussions with their royalty collection societies and say, actually, do we want to collect these fees right now, or do we want a royalty collection society to collect them on our behalf and administer them later? And I think choice is really important, and a toolkit is really important. And I just don't think this license in its current form is very empowering. I think in many ways it's disempowering, and obviously it's very disheartening when representative bodies are not included in that consultation at all.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, and I think it doesn't feel fit for purpose right now, especially more so right now as we're in lockdown and people are looking for arts and culture to keep them going. Annabella, you were going to say something then.
Well, I was just going to say we are hugely in favour of songwriters being paid for when their work is being performed. And obviously in the real world, when we were all back to real world, in the world pre-pandemic, when we were all going out and seeing gigs all the time, a lot of what we saw was original material. Some of what we saw wasn't. So there's some great, you know, pubs who put on covers bands every night, and it is absolutely right that the covers bands are paid for, that the original songwriters are paid for when their music is being performed. But you're right, we're in a pandemic. We're in a situation where no one can perform live. We're in a situation where channeling money, particularly when people are performing their own material through a system where it will take 18 months to take to 2 years to get back to you, is insane. I think what is most shocking, never mind the fact this was announced during Independent Venues Week, we've been aware that PRS have been looking at online live streaming licensing. They've seen some really big shows like the Dua Lipa show, like Liam Gallagher, all of which involve writers, some of whom aren't the performers, right? It is right that there is a license there. And it's also right that in the long term, this is a new form, it is a different form of exploitation of content than, you know, Liam sailing down the Thames with lots of people filming him. It is a new form of content. It's live. People are buying tickets in a different way. Maybe there should, in the long term, when live music is back and it's additional, maybe there should be a different tariff. Who knows? But the point is, there should have been a proper consultation. They should be looking at from big shows to tiny shows. It should be proportionate. And they should be speaking not only to venues, absolutely to venues, promoters, but also artists and their representatives. Because in a lot of cases, artists are putting on their own shows. And now they're in a situation where, I mean, the mad thing is, someone was saying to me, what do you do now? You know, it's £22.50 up to £250 of tickets. You're going to get to the stage where you're like, do I dare sell one more ticket in case it takes me into the £45 levy or not? And most artists aren't VAT registered. So actually, then they're paying plus VAT. And just one thing that came through to me from one of my members tonight, who's been doing these small scale online live shows, there is no communication about how the artists will be paid back. I think the normal, very small shows, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I've not done this for years. My husband used to be in a band I managed for 20 years ago. But I think you get, it's £10, isn't it, that goes to the songwriter per performance in the normal world. From the small gigs and pubs. There's nothing here about, you know, if we're paying £45, is the artist songwriter going to get £10 back, or is it going to be a revenue share, and how much will be deducted off? They clearly won't get the VAT back. Well, of that £45, will they get 40 back in 2 years' time? The fact that they haven't talked to artists about that is just, well, the whole thing is insane, but that's just really insane. Sorry, that's my rant over. I've got to go soon, but I just wanted to get a bit of a rant.
Thank you, Arabella. And I know, Annabella, I know also that Dom at the Boiler Room, she's got Rob Wilmshurst there who's the CEO of Sea Tickets. I know that they've got to go at 6 o'clock. So, Nigel, I do want to come on to you as well as an artist, but I just wanted to speak to Dom, and I don't know if Paul is still there, but between Paul, Dom and Rob, do you want to just come in now with your comments?
Yeah, I think just to probably echo what's being said at the moment, we're obviously together, so that's why I'm not wearing a mask. Yeah, it's just this confusion and worry that the kind of shows that a lot of small spaces are doing aren't even making it, or are not making any money. So we're going to be now losing money by putting events on, and that's, you know, and not even. You know, I thought the whole point of us being able to stream and do events like this is to be able to employ freelancers. I've got freelancers employed tonight. We are doing in conversations with. We haven't got any live music streams, but we did a live music stream on Monday, didn't we, with your band? And yeah, I mean, it's just an unnecessary stress that has now going to be causing people quite considerable worry. And I think going back to the drawing board and consulting with PRS members, like this one sitting right here, would be a good idea. I don't know what you think, or Rob, you want to come in?
Well, it's like you were saying, there's no guarantee it's going to come back to the artist in a meaningful way at this moment in time. And it will be a long time before, you know, us members will see those royalties, and they certainly won't reflect what is being paid by the venues as well. So it isn't coming, you know, going out one door straight into the artist's pocket played. It will be getting redistributed to lots of people, and it is like Dom said, I'm not sure I'd see the point of introducing this at the moment, where a lot of the Streams shows, certainly our Stream show, was all about raising revenue for the venue to keep it going, or raising revenue for another cause. They're not necessarily money-making ventures, so to speak.
Yeah,
I think it's a really interesting point, and I think at a time when so many people have had to adapt and overcome and find new ways through this, that this kind of levy not only is just untimely, but hasn't been well thought through, and it is causing additional stress to people. Rob, as somebody who runs a ticketing company, you know, for whom you have a huge number of not just our venues, but the venues all around the country and all around the world working with you, what's the implications for you on something like this, where people are suddenly pulling shows and it's really going to affect the bottom line of venues?
Well, you know, we're very much a business that supports grassroots venues and artists. That's why I'm sat here tonight. I don't know enough about PRS, but you know, I run a ticketing business, which is an exact business. It's a business where the money's dispersed and it's accurate and it's reconciled and everyone knows how it works. You've got a situation. I've only read what I've read this morning. You know, £500 gross, 9% levy or tax. If you are in a venue like this and you write your own material, all the rest of it, what you're paying PRS for, because the royalties are yours anyway. Now, I don't know enough about it, so forgive me if I sound like an idiot. But that 9% disappears into some machine somewhere, and probably, cynically, I would say it gets dispersed amongst what Spotify tell the PRS people are listening to, which doesn't really favour the little guys that keep us all alive and allow us to have this fantastic business we all enjoy. So that's got to be wrong. What you do about it, I don't know. But I think the fact you've mobilised yourself this quickly to have this conversation suggests there's some anger in the segment. And if we can help in any way, then of course we put our name down, as we always have. And I know Adam well, and he knows what we're like on the secondary thing and the touting thing. We're right in the middle of that, fighting that.
Yeah.
I think there are ethics in the core of our business, but we need to understand how this works. Whatever you want, though, we're here. Just let us know.
Thank you, Rob. I just want to bring Nigel in. Nigel from Dodgy. Thank you for joining. As an artist, we've seen already in the last sort of 24 hours since just over 24 hours since the announcement was made, a lot of artists coming out not supporting this move by PRS, and that really does beg the question: if the artists who really are seen as the main beneficiaries of this are not supporting, what the hell are PRS thinking?
I don't know what they're thinking. This is a real shock for everybody, I think, and taking everybody aback and by surprise. Not something we were expecting right now in the middle of a pandemic, when everyone's trying to pull together in the same boat, you know, help each other out. But when we do gigs, people who are on the front line in the NHS need these things to come and watch, to unwind. They don't get it. People aren't getting live music. They need it. Musicians and people, we know they need it. One big question for me is that the big problem this year, and since Spotify started, has been streaming money. You can pay £10 a month and you can stream what you like. This is still streaming. This is less people. So if you equate this, if I do a gig tonight, which I am, and say 150 people join, on streaming basis, that would be what, 0.005 of a pence? So where did PRS get that £45 figure from to actually stream gigs? It doesn't make sense to me. It's like the musicians and the people that are watching music aren't the people that should be paying for this. It's got to be the big businesses, really, who are got to put it back into this. It's like, how many more massive royalty checks can Elton John have? You know, because this really is how PRS works. It's like a pyramid, performing rights society. But I think it's like a pyramid rights society. So the people at the top always get the money. So you lot doing your gigs, Paul McCartney and Elton John are going to benefit from it. Unfortunately, you know, and I'm not digging them, because they're great artists, but it just doesn't seem thought through, and it feels horrible that we haven't been consulted on it.
I think the lack of transparency in this. I know, Annabella, you were saying that, you know, that they've been working for some time, but the lack of transparency.
Well, so their logic is partly, although it's perverse logic in a pandemic, but their logic is actually on streaming. They share the revenue out, and about 15% in theory goes to publishing of the total revenue coming in from subscribers on streaming, and about 52% goes to the label. It's not about how many people listen, it's about how then it's divided up in a pie. But so the issue here is they're like, oh, it's streaming, so it should be higher, it should be much, much higher. But actually the economics are based on gigs, and there's a pandemic. So because there's a pandemic, all the economics are based on this replacing live, not being a repeated stream that you can listen to for months and months and months, but being a one-off gig. And that's the crazy thing, is that you've got publishers, big publishers, and you're right, Nigel. Basically, if they don't attribute the money back to the people who actually wrote the songs, because maybe you're not a PRS member or it's not been registered properly, then it goes into a big pot and it's divided on market share. It just goes on market share. So, I mean, they would say you've got to register, but yeah.
I think we might have just lost Annabella there for a little while. I wanted to bring in some of the venues that we've got on the call. And I know, Jim, I'm going to start with you. I think you've cancelled every show you had booked in.
Yeah, we don't really feel like we had a choice because it was dropped on us at such late notice, so late in the day. And we found out via Twitter, not even a direct mail to us. Until we really understand the implications of it and how it can affect us, there was no way we could really proceed with any of the shows that we had on. Everybody needs time to digest this information. And we've been preparing for something from PRS, but we kind of entered this paradox now where PRS will quite happily say that an in-person gig is 4.2% and that is a fair price for live performance. But now they're also saying, but we cannot accept 4.2% for an online performance. So you've got this paradoxical thing where both things can't be a fair wage. So we were completely taken aback. And once you start doing the maths on this for the very smallest shows, and that's the ones that really are the hardest hit by all of this, the very small shows, the very small artists, the very small venues, you can look at some artists actually coming with 135% of their takings being taken by PRS, and it's completely disproportionate at the lowest end. However, it may benefit people at the top end. At the smallest end, that's where everyone's getting hammered now.
Yeah, and Chris, we obviously had the discussion this morning. From your perspective, I think, excuse me, from your perspective this morning, you had some interesting takes on that as well, in terms of just the speed at which it's happened, the decisions people are having to make. Do you want to add your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, looking across the Yorkshire region here, we've had massive cancellations of shows on all platforms, and generally people are really confused as to what's been going on from an artist point of view as well. At my venue, we've got 2 streams this week, some of which were with artists that were PRS registered, some of them with artists where they're all originals. Yes, we even got one artist who's one of the songwriters in the band is PRS registered and the other one isn't. And they were talking about just playing the 3 songs that they were going to, was sung by the person who wasn't PRS registered. There's just this feeling at the moment that the venues, in almost what is it to do with the venues? Artists, can use other platforms as far as, they could be performing from home. So why is this? Who is the licensee holder in this particular state of things? Just historically, we've been, event organisers and bookers and those sort of things, but actually venues don't need to be involved in this process. Almost, we've been used as a production house, and had people hire us. But we're still liable for this, or at least that's what PRS seems to be pushing towards. And it just seems absolutely ludicrous that that's the situation. And as Jim was saying,
it's the venues taking all the risk with absolutely none of the upside.
Yeah, and we're also being lumbered with, PRS particularly are very good at providing, a lot of admin work for venues to have to do. With absolutely no benefit whatsoever to the venues. They've never been willing to take it on themselves to the point of, or put it on the artists and songwriters that should be claiming this. And it often gets lumbered on the venues, and we have to spend time, even now, for people who aren't PRS registered. This is the other thing. We still have to kind of inform PRS that this particular performance is by an artist that's not PRS registered. It's nothing to do with them. But they would, if we don't do that, and I've had it historically with my venue with live performance, where they have taken the viewpoint that unless you can prove it's not PRS registered, we will assume it is.
It's the opt-in versus the opt-out thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And that level of is just crazy for venues at this time.
Yeah, I just want to come to Dave at Hotbox Live. I think it's your first year as part of Independent Venue Week. So we nearly got there. The biggest frustration for you, obviously there's a number of different elements of this that are just pretty catastrophic. What's been the biggest frustration for you?
Oh, well, second year, by the way, for independent.
Second year, I beg your pardon.
That's all right.
I think it's the first year that we've spoken, you and I personally.
It is. Look, we're still going to continue with all the streams, so just that's going to be my view. But I am not going to be paying the PRS. So and it's that simple. If they want a day in court or whatever they want to do, they can know where to find me. So I'm quite happy to have that conversation with them. It's appalling what they're doing. They've basically, with all the bands we have on this week, all original artists, and we pay them to actually live stream. We actually record the shows. We do the 32 stem record on the back of our desk as well, and we give them tapes so they can master, produce their own videos, do what they want to do with it. It's all for the artists really, and to up our profile. So when we go back, we're going to be a little bit better off. The PRS doesn't seem to have the first idea what venues do. They don't seem to understand that we're here for the actual musicians and for the whole of the industry, and not for, as Nigel says, just Elton John and Paul McCartney. It's the struggling people at the bottom end of the food chain. We have a girl on with us, Loanne Louise, and she's a single parent mum. She's struggling at the moment because she's getting no gigs, etc. So we book her, pay her a little bit more, make sure she sees it through. You've got to help these people. I will not give the PRS that money. I'd give it to her instead, period. And that's the way I'm going to play with it at the moment.
You're getting a lot of support in the comments box, Dave. I can tell you that now.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring Adam in. One of the things I'm a little bit staggered about, I don't know actually if that's a surprise, is there's been absolutely no response from PRS in the last sort of 24, 36 hours since they made this announcement. And the backlash has been very public. Guardian ran a whole feature today. Do you have any thoughts on what their approach is at the moment?
They're just running scared now, aren't they? They've made a huge cock up. They're expecting to get universal support from everybody and say what a wonderful people they are. The fact of the matter is they're just greedy people trying to charge admin fees and spread it along the money amongst the people that don't need it. If I was putting on a covers band, I would happily pay that £22.50 or the £45, and I think that's quite right. All the shows this week we've got one after party show. And it's a drum and bass people, an after party thing. I will pay for that because I'm sure some of the drum and bass he'll be doing will be snippets from somebody else. I haven't got a clue, by the way. I don't understand drum and bass, but I'm sure some of it's going to be that way. So I'll be very, very happy to pay it for that. But I'm not happy to pay for all these other little small local bands that are trying to eke a living and get somewhere. Just completely wrong. Wrong.
Tim Perry from the Windmills just joined, and he says he's got a stream from the Windmill on Friday, and like Dave, they're not going to pay PRS. And I know another one of our venues has said that they've been, I think it was it you, Jim? You'd already paid the additional PRS streaming license, and this just feels like a tax on top.
Well, I mean, and add to that the fact, of course, we have a venue license as well. So we're paying PRS twice already, and now they're asking for a third payment for the same show.
And I think we're going to see that a lot, to be honest, unless you offer artists and managers a choice in the, a discussion at the table. What you're just going to see is non-compliance on a very large scale.
Yeah. Well, I think almost seems to have accepted that as well, because even on their own artist FAQs, it's talking about, there's an FAQ there where it says, artists, will we expect to see a massive amount of increase in our royalties as a result of this? And PRS turn around and say, well, probably not, because we can't ensure we're going to get the data, and there's an admin charge basically. So it is ludicrous.
It's never been easier to gather data. It's never been easier, and the way that needs to happen has seriously got to change as well. Adam, I just wanted to bring you in. We've had many conversations over the years about this, and I just wanted to bring you in for your thoughts on the whole thing, both from the way that PRS are handling it and what you think this might mean for where we're at with these licenses and how they're operating.
I mean, in terms of communications, obviously they probably could have handled it a bit better. And it's probably communications 101 on how not to do it, really. I mean, aside from sort of dropping the bomb unannounced and doing it during independent venue week, I think as well the fact that there's so many questions about even how it works. You know, and it's just crying out for there to be a proper consultation, because, you know, there's a lot of, as Annabella was saying, there's a lot of different perceptions about from where you sit about what a live stream is. You know, there's a lot of, again, I can imagine copyright lawyers getting very, very excited at this point, and that's fine. You know, they need to get in a room and decide some of these things, but, you know, clearly there's a pandemic on. It's time for, you know, pragmatic decisions, support for grassroots. And, you know, you sort of hope that they'll just say, look, we've made a mistake, we've dropped a ball, we've rethought this, let's have a consultation and move forward. I mean, if they're sensible, I think they'll do that. I think if they hunker down, though, and, you know, pretend that it's all going to go away, I mean, it's a bit I mean, you imagine it'd be a bit alarming for them to hear that, you know, people are going to be like, well, we're just not going to pay. I mean, that's surely the worst of all worlds for them, really.
I think that's quite an interesting point, and actually, I'm not going to name names, but on the call earlier that we did, an internal call with our community, people were saying, you know, somebody in particular was saying, we need to come together as a community and collectively challenge this now. It feels like a bit of a turning point. I mean, I know these conversations have been had before, and people have put a lot of pressure on PRS, and quite rightly, but I think just the insensitivity of how this has been handled with no time to plan has really got people's backs up. And I hope and think, for all the right reasons, this is going to be a real turning point.
I mean, one other point as well. I mean, I think that, you know, and again, I mean, this is probably more from a venue perspective as well. But, you know, a big thrust of the Cultural Recovery Fund as well was, you know, it was encouraging venues to invest in live stream technology. You know, and again, everyone appreciates we can't have full capacity shows back safely, but, you know, this was going to be the next best thing. So people were being encouraged to invest in this technology, put these kind of shows on. And again, it just seems a bit weird that PRS would be sort of, you know, oblivious to that fact, really. That again, you know, it's things that should be supported. And, you know, again, these are the people that play these shows. A lot of them, ideally, would be their next generation of members. So, you know, you want to be nurturing and bringing into the fold and etc. But there doesn't seem to be that aspect to it either, which again, it feels a bit strange from a communications point.
Nick from Sneaky Pete's. Annabella, I know you've got to go, but this is quite an interesting question from Nick from Sneaky Pete's. What about direct licensing? Artists are for performances of their own songs from the event organizer, right? There you go. Oh, thanks, Oscar.
Yes, well, I mean, you can. It's complicated, and I actually hadn't really had to look at it before, because people tend to try and direct license. Managers certainly tend to look at it when they're doing global tours, because of the uncertainty of getting the money back. And in some countries, I know we complain, or some people here complain about a 4.2% of gross rate. In some European countries, it's like 12%. So in the cases where the artist is the songwriter, it may be worth it to go through a really complex process of withdrawing your rights from the collecting societies, your live performance rights, because going through that process is outweighed by the amount of money you'll be able to get back for your songwriter, filling out the forms and, you know, extracting your rights in Germany and, you know, the US and the Netherlands, where I think it's 8% all around. So that's normally only why it's been the really big artists who bothered trying to do direct licensing. I had a look this morning, actually. It's really complicated. But I can imagine you have to, in fact, what you have to do, not only do you have to give 4 weeks notice and fill in a whole load of forms as a writer to take your rights out and say what it's for, but you have to give an indemnity to PRS, I understand, to prove that you're able to do that, and in case they license your rights by mistake. I mean, this is, as we say, we're in a pandemic. No one should even be having to look at this, but I suspect if you manage to find that page on the PRS website, if there are any artists on here, if you do look at it, maybe email PRS and ask them about the process, and, you know, use it as a way to flag your disapproval. I suspect lots of people will be. I've heard that's happening already. Yeah, you don't want to have to do that, but this is just insane. So I'm so sorry I've got to go, but thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining, Annabella. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. I mean, for example, there does exist a waiver form if you're a PRS member and you want to do direct licensing. It's not particularly well known, but it does exist. And so I think that option in this online tariff needs to exist as well, because at the grassroots level, at least amongst kind of our level that we're talking about, very often the artist is the songwriter and is the rights holder. And so if they want to sort of directly license on the online streaming, then I think they should at very least be given the option to do that. At the moment, it's not at all clear whether PRS is giving them the option to do that.
I think one of the issues is that so much of the PRS model it's such an old legacy, and rather than trying and starting from a moment now and starting, I mean, it's, you know, it's fit for purpose, not at all for this particular situation, but rather than trying to reinvent what they've already got, it feels like they should be starting from scratch, coming up with some new models for the current time, and then perhaps implementing those rather than trying to rework what's already there, because that always takes so much longer. You know, there's a comment here from, where's it gone? Harcrit, who says they deliberately make it vague. I think they make it vague, but I think they also make it complicated. It's very hard to pin down any kind of information at a time when actually it should be super simple. And I think a huge audit is needed of the way that the process is gone through from all sides. There needs to be almost an independent look at the whole thing. And Clara, you were talking earlier about this toolkit, and I think that feels like I've had conversations again with different people this morning and a little bit yesterday about a toolkit and how the emphasis needs to be taken off the venues who are taking all the risk. And really, if you look at where the emphasis is on these shows, it's for the new up and coming artists, and perhaps that's an area that we need to look at rather than putting the lion's share of the work on the venues who have so much else to deal with. Does that, I mean, from a venue point of view, Jim or Dave or Chris, what are your thoughts on that? It almost feels like this is something that you should be backing rather than driving.
Definitely. I think it really needs to sit with the artists. And I think as well, the other important thing is that a lot of the PRS members who have joined up to PRS over the years for various reasons, to get royalty payments and to ensure these things are in place, those are on old models. Every time that if a membership organisation changes its terms as to what it's doing, then they should be consulting with their members. And I think that many of the artists do need educating as to what rights they have, how they can do this, and for everyone, most people, their main revenue streams were coming from live music, and some from merch, some from other methods like that. It's only been over the last 6 months or so that people have really started to focus on live streaming. It is completely new to them, and a lot of them, and a lot of venue owners as well, don't necessarily have the education in recorded music, don't know about mechanical licenses, don't know about synchronization licenses and all these things, and aren't aware of these things, and they're the ones that really need to be challenging PRS at this time, and saying this isn't what they want. Because I mean, this isn't the only license they will need. You've got, as Jim mentioned earlier, there are other licenses for view on demand and everything like that. And a lot of artists are either not aware of it or are not aware that PRS are acting in this way.
Jim and Dave, have you got any more thoughts? I'm just going to read through and see if I can pick up some of these questions. They're coming in so thick and fast.
Yeah, sorry, the band just arrived for tonight's show. They're just walking past. So I missed about that. I forgot what it's all about. Yeah, you know what it is. It's about have a good time. Look, I did quite. The one thing I wanted to say is Nigel's sort of point earlier about taking. I do feel like we're being made the easy target for this, because they know we haven't really got the money to fight them in the courts or do much about it. Whereas the likes of Spotify that streams people music forever and pay the artists nearly nothing, they'll never get had, and I just, my opinion is that I'm going to continue and not pay them. So, and nothing's going to change my mind on that. And I do actually quite look forward to my day in court, because any defence that says I shouldn't pay artists for what they're doing, instead I should give it to the PRS and distribute back to them, probably get 5% of what they would have got from me, is daft. It's just stupid. It's on all levels. It's absolutely idiotic. And Nigel doesn't want the money from Hi-Fi, who are playing tomorrow night, to go to him. He wants the band that needs the money to have it. That's what we all want. And I get so tired with the PRS's attitude. But that's mine. I forgot completely what the track was, because all these rockers just walked in here, and and all other venue owners will know what that's like. You're getting away goes in adrenaline. So sorry about that.
Bless you, Dave.
I just wanted to sort of add to that. I mean, what we've seen as well recently over the last year is a kind of breakdown of the traditional how a gig gets put on. So, you know, who's the promoter, who's the, you know, where's the venue? The venue's in a virtual space. Who, you know, where actually physically is it? And I think what we're seeing a lot more of is artists themselves actually taking control of that situation and self-promoting and instigating all this streaming themselves. So in that sense, why would the PRS be coming to the venue that is just a space that they're playing from in the first place? And if they're not doing that, then they're going to the artists themselves and asking them to pay to play their own work. And you've got this really perverse situation that makes less and less sense the more we get into this.
I think that's true. And I'm just going back to some of the questions that have been asked. There's the bleeding obvious. They were told by member services today that they'd have to revoke their PRS registration if they wanted to withdraw rights for online streaming. So it seems that the artists are facing their own challenges. And I just get the sense that PRS have put this announcement out. They're not nimble enough to respond to what's needed. If they'd have done the consultation, they would have had the Q&As ready for this. They wouldn't have put this out in the first place because it's very clearly not fit for purpose. And I can't believe that we're still in this situation where they're not responding. And I can't believe they're going to go through the rest of this week, you know, by the end of tomorrow, having not said anything. I mean, Adam, have you got any more thoughts on? I know comms is one of your things, but it does feel like they're really they can't hunker down on this, I don't think, anymore.
Well, I mean, they could do. I mean, again, if I was advising them personally, I'd suggest that probably isn't the best solution. But again, it's. I think because they're coming at it probably with a very different perception, and perhaps from a perception of a major publisher about what a stream is, and again, making a decision. Which again, you just need a consultation. You need to understand everyone else's perspectives, and clearly. I mean, if they're listening to, the people on this call or people in the chat, I mean, that's what's needed. They just need to take on board. And again, I think what Jim was talking about as well, about actually even the mechanics of how these shows get put together and who's taking the risk, how much they cost. And, it's one, again, it's one thing obviously taking place in a small venue or a small space. I mean, again, obviously there's some massive live streams now as well. And again, it's not necessarily major publishers who are investing in those shows. It's different kinds of people. There's different costs and breakdowns. They need to understand all of that before they come up with, licensing solutions.
And I think it's really interesting that maybe for the first time, their own members are. I mean, it seems like they're acting against the interests of their own members, which is just bizarre.
Yeah, and somebody did a calculation yesterday, worked out how many people are employed and how much revenue they're bringing in. It worked out something like $74,000 per employee, and we all know that people at the entry level at PRS are not on that, and people are now putting things in the comments about the fact the CEO is paid £900,000, and this lack of transparency, treating it like a private commercial organization when it's actually a membership organization. And there's plenty of people on here as saying nationalize it, democratize it. I think at a time when being able to measure and record automatically things that are happening, it's not happening here in an organization where it would matter so much, so people could get the money that was due to them rather than it just being blanket shared around. It doesn't feel like they're responding quick enough.
They've done a very bad job over the years of meeting up to the technological advances that are going on at the moment, and the reason why they're doing that is because it works in their favor. The fact that if you have one song per set that is done by a PRS artist, and then they can rightfully claim for all of the revenues and stuff, just means that this vagueness does completely work in their favor. And we're coming to a time where that really needs to change. And as Jim mentioned, the models for the music industry were already pretty complicated. I'm in a world where I've got artists who are coming to use my space, which they can hire or which they can use just for production, or we can put on shows where we're promoting it ourselves and they have nothing to do with it. And we're using a platform which has been developed by another venue and which has got licensing for that. We've got people who want to come and do it on view on demand. There's just so many different options, and they just seem completely behind it. And it's also interesting to see that, they've announced what the licenses are at this level. They've still not announced what the licenses are above £500 because they're still negotiating that. They're still, they're consulting with that, with the people they need to be, being the big labels, but they're having no consultation at all with people at this level at all.
Nigel, just to bring you back in from an artist point of view, I mean, I know it's only happened very, very recently, but have you spoken to any of your other artist community? Are you getting a sense of how people are feeling? I've had a conversation with somebody today that said that, you know, a lot of their artists are starting to, you know, leave PRS and go to other organizations.
I think everyone's just really confused. I think they make it quite difficult to understand. I think my experience with the music industry was always, this is very difficult to understand. It's like that. This is the music industry. It's about money. It's about ownership. And it's like, it's unfortunate that even during a pandemic, that hasn't changed. And it's still Music Venue Week, pandemic, people are told to stay at home. And now they're trying to tax you for playing a gig from your home to people that haven't been able to go out. That is just very cruel, I think. I can't think of any other word. It's quite cruel. And to be a member of a society like that makes me feel a little bit sick, actually. I'm not happy at all. And as an artist, you know, I have songs that get paid by PRS. You know, I've had a couple of hits way a long time ago. But, you know, I'm writing songs all the time. Now, am I allowed to play my new songs that aren't registered, that probably aren't finished in my own head, aren't out there? Do I have to pay for my own? You know, that's Shawshank Redemption territory. They can't take the music from you. Surely. Is that what they're saying? They can have my new songs, or can I just have to jam all night and make songs up so I can get around it? I don't know. It's very confusing. I think most people are really confused about this. Saying my that's
what you're here. You know, that's what everybody's here for. That's what this platform's for. Somebody was saying earlier in the huge number of comments coming in that they were a jazz club, and you know, if things were going to carry on, they would have to say what artists would come in and pay, because they're going to have to pay different licenses for different performances. It's just the utter confusion around this, and this has come about because they haven't consulted. They've rushed it through, and I think, you know, the fact is Independent Venue Week is just that little bit extra sad, because people put a lot of effort into this week because it's meant to be the spotlight. We're already facing a huge challenge with it being so online because we can't get out and about. And I just feel so much for our community, people like Jim and Chris and Dave and others who had shows lined up that just had to pull them. And there's all these people, there's, you know, without work, without the revenue. It just feels very out of sync.
And I think it misunderstands why artists are doing these streams in the first place. It's acting as this, you know, pretending as if this is a very like a money-making exercise. It isn't. You know, often it's for charities, or it's just to pay their own crew and you know, try and get some income where they haven't been able to otherwise. I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, it's incredible.
It's still very much about survival at the moment, I think, for sure. Somebody else was going to jump in there.
I think the timing for it is absolutely atrocious, because, you know, as Jim mentioned earlier, literally 24 hours after the application deadline for CRF2 goes through, where people have been budgeting for the next you know, up to June, end of June, as to what they're going to be spending money on. They won't have budgeted for this in any shape or fashion. Arts councils, when they were administrating it, were very important. You know, this is public money that is being spent, and they want everyone to adopt a value for money approach. Well, a value for money approach this isn't, because we're basically just putting in an administrative cost that is going to go into a hole and won't get to the artist. This won't get to pipeline. It won't allow people to be able to put on shows. And as we've seen in the comments, people are already looking at the fact that £22.50 for the amount of shows they want to put on, it will make a massive shortfall over that period of time. People have been, particularly venues that have been doing Arts Council applications, have been budgeting for exactly what they need, nothing more. And then suddenly this extra. And for the venues that haven't had any money like that as well, you know, they're desperate to get money in from whatever streams they can and pay the artist.
Well, it's one of the, when we did our survey this morning from people to ask who was cancelling shows, you know, we had a variety of responses, and somebody came back to me and said, well, we got CRF money, so if we're going to keep going with our shows, and we'll just use the CRF money to play these licenses. That's not what the CRF money is for. That's not what it was set up for. You know, Harker, bless him again, has said, and we all know how hard Frank Turner's worked over the whole lockdown with his Independent Venue Love program. You know, he raised 10 grand for the Lantern the other week, £6,000 for Boom. He'd done so many shows, and on average, he was raising £10,000 for those venues. what right do PRS have to come along and take that away? And the stupidity of it all is, if the venues aren't around, then there is no license for PRS to hold there. This isn't kind of rocket science, I don't think. I think
it goes back to this idea that that they don't treat their licensees as in the venues with the due respect. If these venues fold, ultimately PRS don't have venues to then go and license, and so it's just such a self-defeating move.
But it's so badly thought out, and I think that's what's got a lot of people's backup. And somebody's, there's a few people commenting on here that there should be a DCMS inquiry in the same way that there has been for streaming, and whether that comes to anything, I don't know. We recorded a culture panel yesterday, which we aired at 3:00 today. We had Andy Burnham on there, Tracy Brabin, Jamie from UK Music, Big Jeff, who's a gig goer, Nathan and Don from the Boiler Room, just talking about how important arts and cultures are to communities and what a difference it makes. And it was such a fantastic panel. We recorded at 10:00 yesterday morning, just as this announcement was being made. And I can't believe the contrast that we're now facing with this discussion. Within sort of 24 hours, it seems absolutely ludicrous. We don't know yet. I'm just looking through some more of these questions. Timing off the back of CRF was particularly cruel. People are absolutely rinsed. January is a hard time anyway. It's a really blue month. The late change to the CRF funds. So those who already have money then have to get another report in by midday tomorrow. Those that were applying for the first time, the deadline, and they are complicated forms to fill in. There's a lot to think about. To have this suddenly thrown at you, I think is just, everyone's saying cruel isn't a strong enough word. I just want to look through some of the other questions. Clara, is there other things that you've been looking at at MVT? I know that there's been a long, fairly public clash with PRS, but I know that they didn't consult on this. Did you have any sort of inkling about what they were planning or when they were planning this?
No, and this is why it's so unbelievable. I mean, prior to this, we would have monthly meetings with PRS. They are an important member of the music ecosystem. We have to have discussions with them as a representative body. And so it's just incredible that at none of these meetings over the past 10 months did they ever mention that, oh, by the way, we're considering unilaterally enforcing this license. I mean, it just sort of speaks of an attitude where they can sort of feel like they can steamroll in and we just have to comply, which is just ridiculous.
It is. And Nathan raises a really good, interesting point from the Brudenell. Also, the cost of the administrative burden, time, effort, emotional stress upon venues that is never compensated upon the reporting to them. It's quite right. And if you look at how much PRS are taking to administer these funds, perhaps that's what needs to happen. The venue should say, well, whatever it is you're charging, we're going to hold back 20% for our time to administer. I mean, that's not a solution, but it does seem just totally one-way traffic.
I think so, or something where it's at least you give venues and artists the choice. If an artist wants to have a PRS license, fair enough, they can do so. But it should also be the choice of actually, like Dave was saying, he has a connection and a relationship with the bands that play in his venue. Why can't he just go to the band and say, actually, do you want me to give you this money directly? I don't have to send it to PRS. It doesn't have to take 18 months to get to you. Why don't we do it that way? And I think at least at our level, at the grassroots level, that's what we should be doing. I don't know about arenas and stadiums. That's not my area of expertise. But at our level, we have direct relationship with the musicians. The rights holders often are the musicians on our stages. So
there's not that huge chain of people involved in certainly in the area that we work. Annabella's just made a comment. Only just realised they charge the artist £20 per work song, admin fee, that they opt out of PRS for live performance. This is unconscionable, really, because actually they're still working on the premise where things weren't automated. It's so much easier now to administer things with the digital world that we live in. Why does it feel like this is still going on?
They had discussions, last year and stuff, longer ago than that, about the fact that they were going to introduce things where musicians would be, would be logging in and would be reporting straight away, and it'd be geolocated so that it was clear that they were at the venue. And all of these things, none of these things have happened. And it is, it should be a lot easier. It should be a lot quicker, because all of these things would also mean there would be less administrative costs and more money, therefore, going to the artist. And they're not willing to put any of these in place. The artists should be able. They should be able to report to say that we are performing our own songs.
I think that's true. We've got Jeff Johns. Hi, Jeff. How you doing? It's lovely to catch you here. Obviously, Jeff, one of the most prolific gig goers in this country, and out every night at gigs, and one of our former ambassadors. He just says it feels like they're bullying the venues. I completely agree, but actually, I feel like they're also not. They're not looking after their artist members. They don't seem to be serving anybody else but themselves. You've got people here at Harcrit, again, it's a monopoly or at best a cartel. Clark Kent Rock and Roll Review, it's a cartel. I know these are conversations that have been had in the past. It does feel like a real sea change now, I think. I don't see how. It feels a little bit like the whole Trump scenario, doesn't it? That you can just bully your way through and just keep going like a steam train. And something has to break. And I feel like perhaps that's kind of close to where we're getting to. We didn't have a particularly set time, but we did sort of talk about maybe an hour. I just wonder, before we wrap up, and we don't want this to just be a talking shop. We don't want another situation where it's all fart and no poo. So perhaps people can just give a thought on what you would like to see next. What would matter for you that we come out of this, so that there is a next step and we can actually move forward with this, rather than this just being a talking shop and everyone just getting angry. What are the things that we'd all like to see? I might start with you, Jim, because you're top of my screen here now.
Well, for me, I mean, the most outrageous thing for all of this for me is having the fixed fee for the very smallest shows. I mean, that was a hard-fought battle to get rid of that in venues themselves, to actually move that onto a percentage thing, and to have that suddenly reintroduced and deliberately targeted at the smallest shows, the very, very smallest ones, is obscene. So I really want to really push hard to get rid of that altogether. And really, by way of apology, I'd like to see the PRS actually waiving fees for the very smallest shows instead of imposing further ones.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good point. And I'm just going to come in here because Brunella back saying lack of desire for them to adopt modern approach to technology to ensure accurate reporting. It seems like a bloody obvious thing, really. Clara, for you and from MVT's point of view?
I agree with what Jim was saying. I think artists, venues, promoters need options. They need to be empowered to be able to make choices on this. Personally, I think at a grassroots level, we need to be exploring things like direct licensing a lot more than we currently have the option to do so. So that, for me, is something that I think could be innovative and exciting, and we could look towards that.
And do you think, just on that note, Clara, I think it feels like we need to get the artist community, especially at the grassroots level, that needs to be the kind of the group that spearheads this, because it is in their interest, and we need to get the onus off our venues and promoters who are putting the shows on, who quite frankly have got quite enough on their plates just keeping themselves going at the moment. And that feels like a sensible way forward, perhaps.
Yeah, I think maybe the MU or another body that represents sort of more the grassroots level at the musician artist level needs to also be involved in these discussions. But of course, half of the problem is that no one was consulted,
Yeah, Harcrit's just saying that as a start, they should release the minutes of the board meeting where the rates were decided, so we can see what consultation actually happened. Chris, I know that you've never got much to say about anything along these lines.
I think really that they need to. I mean, the best thing they could do at this moment is to flip this on its head. Look at this as an opportunity to do pipeline investment into it. Instead of having a license, which they announce for the grassroots level, they say, well, actually, no, we're going to look at the show. Yeah, what are our issues? Our issues are the really big revenue ones, the Dua Lipas and the Nick Caves. And say, well, that's it. We'll do the licensing from that. For everyone below £500, it's free. There is a real opportunity for them to say, well, we're aware that the grassroots artists haven't got money at this moment in time, whereas the artists who are still getting fairly decent checks from it, let's support those grassroots artists by completely flipping this on its head, and having no license fee for anything under £500. And then once we get to that £500 level, then yeah, we are beginning to possibly look at a bit of profit for people. But I think that's the key thing that we need to kind of get them to look at. I do also agree with Clara that it's still an artist issue. And we've said in our announcement today about cancelling that we encourage artists to stand up for this, because to be fair, they're the ones who are members of this organisation. We're only licensees, and we can't really complain about it.
Joe Grint thinks that sounds like says it's far too sensible. So I'm guessing they're right there with you. Nigel, from your point of view, again, the only artist on the call, God bless you, thank you.
Well, it'd be nice to see some fairness, wouldn't it? I think fairness is what we want really out of this. A threshold would be good. I think it's inevitable that something like this has to come on and come in the future to protect the future songs and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But like Chris said, it's obvious that, you know, for the big gigs, yes, there has to be a fee. But for small gigs, I can't see it being working. And it's going to get lost in admin and policing it, and the artist will get no money whatsoever. So it's absolutely pointless, and it's very unfair, and just will not be adopted. And I'll be doing my gig tonight, and I will not be paying this because I totally disagree with it, and wasn't even consulted on it. None of us were. Outrageous.
Yeah. Dave, I know you've got bands in your venue. It seems a bit quieter there now. I know you've had your sound on mute.
Yeah, on mute. Yeah, it's basically I've got nothing to add what the other three said. You know, they've said everything. You know, Jim, Nigel. You know, that's basically where I am. The one thing that we didn't cover was maybe this other thing about 12 hours, being allowed it to have the thing existing for 12 hours after the show, which I didn't quite understand. But, you know, it's not my video anyway. It's a band, so they can do what they want with it. I'm just going to administer it for them, you know, and that's how we've always treated it, you know. So
I think it's been a challenge, but when something is streamed live, it's treated differently. As soon as there's any kind of time delay, then it suddenly becomes a different license because it's a different output. And again, you know, so many of us are learning on our feet with the streaming, especially the venues have already got a lot, you know, have got a lot to deal with. And I think the fact that there are different licenses according to what happens, and if you're in the middle of a live performance that there suddenly is a time delay, what happens then? How is it managed?
I mean, look, there's one interesting thing. So that we had a band on yesterday called Hanya, and really good, Brighton act, and we done a one-shot video for them as well, which we gave to them, and they're going to be releasing that for their next single. Now, I just want to know, do I pay for that? What do I do? What do I do? How does this all work? What I haven't got a clue. You know, it's just a complete mess. And, you know, how anybody can comply to something but nobody really understands is beyond me. I just, so hence, I'll carry on doing it, won't pay, look forward to my day in court. Then I'll fold the company up, open it up as another company name and carry on.
It's a refreshing approach to take.
I shouldn't say that, should
I? Do you know what? I think you've got nothing to lose right now. And I think it's just, I think this is what this forum is about, is for people to air what they're saying. Bev's on from MVT. Can I just add that other collections agencies do exist in the UK? PRS present themselves as if they are the quasi-government body, but they are just a service provider in reality. And they're quite, I think aggressive is possibly the right word when you're a young artist and hoping to enter into the industry. It's everywhere that you should be, you know, signed up as a PRS member. It's the only way to get paid. But the reality, I think, certainly at the grassroots level, is so very different. And I think that's something that we need to be looking at. I guess I'm just trying to read these questions as I'm going through. What's to stop us creating our own copyright organisation? The Welsh-speaking performers have done it. Why can't we? I think it's a huge
legally speaking, there is nothing stopping you. It's just going up against the might of PRS.
Yeah, I think that, you know, Clark Kent's Rock and Roll Review, if everyone refuses to pay, there is no way they can trial everyone without it blowing up in their face. And I think that's what somebody said earlier on our internal calls, like, let's just club together. You know, it's a movement, isn't it? And I think if there's if there's a collective willingness to challenge them on this, I think it's going to have to be the only way. I think we've recorded this call. I think the next steps for us is to get this in front of PRS and ask them for their comment. We'll send them the comments that have come down on the right hand side in the call as well. We can't just let this go. Like I've said from the very beginning, this isn't about Independent Venue Week. this is about the fact that it's happened this week when people have put effort in, but actually this is about people who just want to carry on performing, supporting their community, and out of the blue, an absolutely devastating blow coming to everyone. So I think that's the next steps. And I think I'd like to thank Nigel and Dave, Jim and Clara, and also the people that were on the call earlier. There will be some follow-up. Do keep an eye on our social media and on our website. We will continue to use the hashtag #FixPRS. I know there's some other hashtags knocking around, some that I'm not going to repeat on here. Thank you all so much for joining. I would say please do enjoy the rest of Independent Venue Week, but I'm not quite sure. We're going to try and keep up to date as we can on the website and tell you what shows are and aren't happening. But this is a time more than ever just to go and log on, just go and check some of the websites of the venues that you know and love, and some that you haven't yet visited, and go and support them, buy some merch, see if they've got a crowdfunder. Just really go all out to support, and we'll come back to you on our socials and our website with what we hope the next steps will be. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.